Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Breaking Point Podcast UK. Today, we're here with Matt Wilson. Matt is what can I say? You're a sort of mental health advocate, podcast host, and are you a bodybuilder or some form of intense
Strongman?
Full Strongman. Okay, cool, awesome. And we're gonna have a chat about what Matt's up to and see where the conversation goes. So, Matt, tell the people what you're up to and give us a brief autobiography of yourself.
Oh, you've said brief and autobiography. I'm not sure that's possible, Ollie, but I'll try my best.
That's a good point. Doesn't have to be brief.
Well, as you've already said, I kind of took a break from my own podcast in January because I started a new role, but that podcast is a superhero finder podcast, and it's based on my childhood obsession of superheroes, but finding the power in everyday people. So for the last 7 years, I've been a personal trainer. I qualified as a life coach during COVID because I needed to diversify. And, it's always been about how can I help people? And, there's good sides to that, there's bad sides to that. Sometimes I forget to help myself, and there's been this kind of a real journey of discovery. But in January, I got myself a role in my local college. So 16 to 18-year-olds, and I'm actually a wellbeing officer now. So 4 days a week, I'm a wellbeing officer, and I get to look after and support young people's mental health.
Less brief than that. Let's go into why you think you got into these industries and what you think sparked your interest, possibly as a result of your childhood, or because you don't really look like the type who would be working as like a guidance counsellor, if I'm being completely honest. I wouldn't put you there, but that's great though. I love that. So tell people why you think you're interested and drawn to that.
I'm glad you've pointed that out because that's something that I kind of play on a little bit. I think if you look at me now, whether we look at the beard, whether it's the tattoos, whether it's kind of physical size, I'm 6'2", and as a strongman, it's not societally common to find somebody. We're not grown up with these role models that kind of look the same as I do and do the things as I do, but also quite open emotionally, can be quite open and vulnerable, having discussions with people. And as older I've got, I've lent more and more into that, and actually found that it's a really nice starting point to the conversation to say, actually, physical strength is just as important as the strength to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to talk about emotions. And I think it was lockdown. It was the whole shutdown. It was the whole having an abundance of time suddenly to be able to learn new things. And I learned a lot about myself and really on how to channel those emotions. Because I was always the kid that grew up that I always had girl best friends. I was never the one that would be seen really playing football. I did play football a little bit, but never my thing. My thing was socializing, and it was having these kind of almost being the shoulder to cry on, being the person that you can entrust in, being the confident about and stuff. And it confused me for a little bit. And I was like, well, actually, I do like going to the gym, but I also like doing this. So where does this put me in society? And then, as you get older, you realize that create your own place in society, or it's completely possible to do that. Which is why it's really fun to either, introduce myself without somebody seeing me, or somebody see me and not know what I do. And then we get into the conversation, and there's almost like that little bit of like the play reaction, kind of, I just hear you. Because if I walk into a room and I'm not smiling, which is very, very rare, you wouldn't, like you say, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't guess that I worked in the realm that I work in. But anyone that knows me and has spent time around me knows that I smile a lot. I'm quite bright a lot of the time, and I do like to kind of try and energize a room in some way. So it's just a nice kind of juxtaposition to have, really.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition to have, and based on the small correspondence we've had over message, you definitely are a very accommodating, sort of compassionate person, which I love. And I think going back to you talking about how you had this dichotomy of, oh, I like going to the gym, etc., but I also feel aligned with sort of, I guess, stereotypically opposing sort of ways of being. I think this is a really interesting sort of commentary on, because there's a lot of talk of like this, the binary nature of, you know, everyone's obsessed now with, you know, fluidity and I think we've kind of lost the fact that, and not that I'm not saying that you're androgynous, but having androgynous sort of interests, because is actually something that has always been around and has often been sort of praised historically. And we seem to have lost that a little bit in recent years. And now we've sort of created this slight societal confusion, I think, about how it is acceptable and it is necessary to embody both masculine and feminine, what would you say, modes of being, I guess, and that's kind of
energies, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, exactly. Energies, spirits. It's absolutely, you know, it's always been around, and it's something that is we should all work to incorporate both elements of ourselves. And if we don't, we psychologically we can feel quite lost if we're too binary. So that is absolutely the societal confusion is worthwhile, but maybe it's slightly mixed. So talk about superheroes. Oh, superheroes. Say what you're going to say first. Yeah.
No, I was just going to one of the most interesting episodes, because I did 115 episodes of the podcast, all with different people. And one of the most interesting podcasts I did was I looked at history from a historian, a history of masculinity through the ages. And one of those things that was really apparent was actually masculinity was directed by people in power. So essentially the government and therefore the army a lot of the time as well. So a man's role was kind of, you know, we see it through history and we see this kind of patriarchal society and, you know, men go to war, women stay in the kitchen. And we've moved away from that, which I am happy with. Some people still like that, some people don't, and that's fine. You like. Yeah. What's really interesting is it's not always been the same. At one point, it was very much the man is the family man, the man is the provider for that family, and it is about that bubble. It's not about what you can do to everybody else, what you can do for people around you. So there's always been that other side that is talking about, you know, doing things for others. So it's not necessarily about the ego, it's about doing things for others. And I suppose nowadays with social media being the way it is and us having access to everything all the time, it kind of dilutes that power that the government maybe have, or, you know, society has on creating that role that's required. Because you see, you know, so many different people, you know, so many different things on social media now. But I just wanted to make that comment because it's, you know, we don't often explore that and how it comes about, why it comes about, but usually it's been directed by somebody for a purpose. So it's for the need of that country or for the need of, you know, whatever those people need to be. So I really like to look at what do the people around me need me to be? What do I need me to be?
Yes. I think it's Winston Churchill who said, do not look for what your country can do for you, look for what you can do for your country. And you can insert any other word in country, you know, you can swap out countries, interchangeable. So family, society, friends, and it's all that sort of, the emphasis of giving back has been slightly is bastardized the word? I don't know, but it's got a bad rap, I think, and how people make the assumption that is, there actually is a lot of self fulfillment and a lot of pleasure can be derived from giving back to people, not just from accruing things yourself, and that's what sort of, because we do exist in society that is very sort of self-obsessed. Maybe it's slightly strong, but it's possibly promotes self-interest maybe more than the interest of others. And
really, so, and there's, you know, there's kind of this whole thing
sure.
about, I'm going to say there's this whole thing about selfishness. So I've just got a kitten walking behind the screen as well. So if I do this, not for any other reason. But
adding to the way you look even more, even more of a juxtaposition. Position.
There's four cats.
Yes, perfect.
Brilliant. So, this idea of selfishness and this idea of selfishness being bad and being linked with the ego and being self-obsessed. And what it does is it scares you away from naturally doing things for yourself, which are also selfish, doing things with the only motivation being yourself. That is the definition of selfish, right? Because when we help others, what we need to realize is when we're helping others, the reason we do that deep down on a basic level is because it makes us feel good to know that we have made somebody else's life. So it's a selfless reason, but there's also a little bit of selfishness in there. There's also a little bit of good feeling in there, which is why we see so many people do, volunteer work and charity work, things like that. But they get mixed up, so we almost don't promote that as a thing. It's almost either you care about yourself or you care about other people, but not. He said there's almost that scaredness. This is why we see so many mental health problems, and this is a whole different conversation, but so many mental health issues within sectors that are service-based, within sectors that are NHS, emotionally driven, fire, police, emergency services. All these people that are caring for others don't then look after themselves because it feels like the wrong place to put that energy. But it's absolutely crucial to be able to maintain any kind of being of mental health.
Yeah, it's the sort of the never-ending debate of like altruism. Is it a thing? Do we ever do any selfless act? And I think maybe we slightly misconstrue it as what it means to. Yeah, it's a confusing one. It's a big topic, but I want to move on. I want to talk about superheroes, and I want to talk about your first ever interest in a superhero and why you were drawn to it.
Do you know what? I think my first. I'm going to go back. I'm going to show my age now.
That's fine.
Banana Man.
I don't know who that is.
See, you don't even know who Banana Man is. So Banana Man was a cartoon, British cartoon, and it was a kid called Eric who ate a banana and turned into Banana Man. And
it's just a great idea.
So almost like you kind of Beano type stuff, you kind of just really kind of daft comic book stuff. Anyone look him up, it's the most hilarious thing, and I think Marvel should have a Banana Man. It'd be amazing. But I think it's just that I always liked the idea of becoming someone else. So whether that was when I was growing up, it was then Power Rangers, it was then, things like just putting on this suit and having these powers and helping people, using them for good, and the whole storylines of using the power for good rather than bad, and kind of you learn them stories within it. But it wasn't until really, and the reason why I started getting like Iron Man and stuff tattooed on my arms as well, full of Marvel stuff, was I think it was when I watched probably the first Iron Man, and I watched that, and I was just blown away. I've never really been a massive comic reader; it's always been film for me. But I've just loved the way that, on a surface level, if you're just in the energy where you want to just watch something that's easy, you can watch a comic book film. But if you want to watch something and learn from it, you can watch a comic book film. So there's so many layers within it, because it questions morality, it questions, Iron Man specifically, we see Tony Stark's character, so Robert Downey Jr.'s character, kind of go through addiction issues, mental health struggles, kind of struggles with his identity. But then as soon as he puts this suit on, he becomes Iron Man. So he's got his space to be able to build up this armor, no matter what's going on for him. But it also shines a big light on, as we saw in Endgame. So I'm going to Real Avengers fans now. So as we go into Endgame, when he died. Hopefully that's not a spoiler now. It's been a few years since
it has. Calm down, everyone.
But no matter how long you've got that armor on for, no matter how powerful that armor is, we're not invulnerable. not invulnerable. Now, we don't have a metaverse that we know of, right? So we only have this one life, this one idea of existence. And I've been doing a lot of self-discovery and a lot of therapy, talking therapist, counselling and things like that, other things. And I realised through the stuff that I'd kind of seen in my life, I'd built what I felt like this suit armour, and I felt like a superhero. I felt like anything could be thrown at me. I felt this resilience. I was just like, I can cope with anything. And what I realised was, what I was doing is wearing this armour, and this armour was getting better, thicker, but I wasn't fixing what was the person that was inside it. Yeah. So then I got myself into, a really nice place, a really healthy place in life, healthy relationship. And I didn't have to wear this armour. And I was like, why is this still hurt? Why do I still not feel right? Everything around me is right. It's because I haven't been getting to the root of the person inside the armour. And we can see that just directly within the armour story. So.
And there's a quote, isn't there, in Iron Man? I think he says to Spider-Man, he says, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't wear it. And that's kind of what you were just speaking about. It doesn't matter how powerful and how strong and impenetrable the suit is. If the person wearing it doesn't embody the principles that the suit represents, then they shouldn't wear it. And my favorite superhero is Spider-Man, and the original Sam Raimi trilogy is phenomenal in that. And in Spider-Man 2, another spoiler, but we're talking 20 years, so it's fine. Peter Parker loses his powers and he doesn't know what's happening. And then there's a moment where he runs into a building and saves someone as Peter Parker without the suit. And that's kind of what the whole point is. And just another thing that's come to my mind, Captain America. The whole reason Captain America is chosen to be Captain America is not because he's the biggest, the strongest, and the toughest. It's because he embodies the characteristics that a scientist, I can't remember his name, wants in the super soldier. So it's not about this, it's about, this. In the beginning of Captain America. So yes, you're completely right with everything you said there.
It's not necessarily about what someone can do. It's often the reason why they're doing it. And that's what tells us what's deep inside the person. So really, whether it's a suit, whether it's a car, whether it's anything that we kind of add on to ourselves, it should be a magnification of that.
Yes.
Rather than that being you. So if you feel like you are, and this is a real life application of that, if you feel like you are pretending or you are making yourself fit in by wearing certain things, by doing certain things, but actually that's not true to who you actually are and what you actually want, then that's not going to last forever. And that's doing exactly what we're saying. It's not looking at the person inside the suit, the things.
It should be an augmentation, not a compensation. Fundamentally,
that was a mic drop moment there, Robert.
Yeah, that was a good moment. Yeah, it won't be the title of the podcast though, but yeah, no, it's good. I just thought of that. It rhymed as well. Brilliant. And it did. Yeah. So you did 100. So talk to me about the podcast then. What did you learn? Why did you start it? And why have you stopped as well? Keep going.
Well, really, why I've stopped at the moment, and I say pause because I would like to pick it up, but really at the moment, and I really found that the best episodes came out when there wasn't necessarily any pressure. I could just enjoy them, enjoy the flow, and right now, if I tried to put them in, I just know I'm honest with myself that that it. And it's fine because there's still listens going on. Things have slowed down a little bit, but people are still tuning in, and it's essentially when you do a podcast,
you've got a lot
just on a library, isn't it? Always there, so
it's live.
And why did I start again? Lockdown. So what I found was I was used to being in front of hundreds of people a week. So at the time I was doing seated exercise classes with the elderly, again, maybe you wouldn't expect someone like me to be doing that kind of thing, but I had my own community company doing that. I was personal training as well as doing some volunteer work as well. So I was a scout leader, club scout leader. So, you know, all these various little things. I like to try new things, if you haven't gathered. But I realised as soon as we were unable to see people and unable to communicate, because it was a very strange time to the world, that I was missing something. I was missing something, and I realised that I was missing just communicating with people and having a voice. So I just downloaded Anchor. So before I even knew about Riverside and whatnot, I downloaded Anchor, and I was just like, okay, can I have a play with this? So, and what's really funny is if you ever go on to podcasts, I've left the very first episodes are still there. So I've done 3 different series. I did I think it called it the Fitness Matters podcast, and then it was another one, and then the Superhero Finder. So all the episodes are there, so you can listen to that first one and go, man, that's raw. No microphone, recorded on the mobile phone, literally just me and me wandering around my house. So there's probably all sorts of sounds and stuff. But I didn't want to spend loads of time editing and make fancy and things. And once I got into it, I thought there's something missing from this, and they were all just me talking. Very much like if you've ever listened to the Diary of a CEO. Diary of a CEO started with Stephen Bartlett. Just him.
Mm.
And then we both made that change to then invite other people on, very much like we're doing today. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't whether I didn't want it to all be about me, but also if we're thinking about topics and we're thinking about things to talk about, it's really nice to be able to drive what we talk about by the guests that you have on. It leads to variety, it leads to all sorts of different conversations, and it leads to, I suppose, a little bit of, from a host point of view, a little bit of a rest from thinking of
absolutely,
I was driving from someone else's experience and drive that word. So then I started doing that, and that's when it kind of just took hold. And the last time I looked, I was on about 5,500 listens, which started to kind of exponentially grow. It started off very small and then grew. I think the most popular episodes had 180 downloads. Now, I did spend the time looking at things like Joe Rogan and going, well, they've got millions. How can I make a living out of this? And I found as soon as I put pressure on myself to do that, I lost interest, kind of burnt out myself. I was doing 3 episodes a day and I was just trying to do too much. So again, brought it back. Didn't think about making any money from it. And I haven't to this day made any money. But I just kept doing it. I love doing it. And I had, and I just kept stretching myself and kept thinking, who can I get on? Who do I think would come on? So I've got people from, friends who I think have done some incredible things. So I started off finding people who I thought were superheroes, real life people into real life. So then finding people who, own that power, so maybe people that run their own businesses based on their ability to do something. So, and usually the best episodes came from the people that were humble, right? So I also fell into the trap of going, and getting a few guests who were very confident about the fact that they were very good at something. Sometimes the conversations, felt a little bit rigid, and there wasn't that. It was almost like we were saying about there's the outside and then there's the inside. And what you get is the outside. You get the rehearsed. You get all the stuff that they used to saying on other podcasts. So there might have been on 300 yet. You get almost like a sense of rehearsal or practiced. And, some of the best episodes were people that just were open to go anywhere with the conversation. Because I would always make it a thing to ask somebody about what they do, so they can have this chance to kind of chat about what they do. They can plug websites and things like that, because I think it's a great opportunity to get that out. But also, ask some person's superpower was, which was a bit of a curveball for some people. But also behind that, so when they'd identify what was their strength and kind of, okay, so what's behind that then? So when you were growing up, did you always want to do this? So, and we'd kind of dig, and you find these little ways just to get conversations out of people, and then we'd find the big, some kind of, whether it's we call them ACEs in the mental health world, so that adverse childhood experiences. So whether it's something within their family or whether it's something that's gone at a young age, challenges them that's carried forward, or whether it's a trauma or something like that, or whether it's just something that they haven't thought about for a while. It leads these really, really interesting conversations. I've had the world's strongest man on, so I never thought I'm a strongman. So I thought, well, I'll just message the world's strongest man. And all of a sudden, I was then talking to somebody over in Canada, Mitchell Hooper, the world's strongest man. And I was like, how am I doing this? But it's because I reached out to people that cared and people that were just into, sharing their experiences. Wild ride, wild world. So many different people, from coaching to, people that are employees for a company that just do something because they care about it, or people that have been through, some really, really horrific things, challenging things, accidents, life-changing things. So the one real pattern, the one real thing that holds it together is the fact that these people I would consider superheroes in their own right.
Yeah,
apart from that, went wherever they need to go.
Yeah, that's sort of, I think either I said that to someone or someone said that to me that also had a podcast. They said everyone's different, everyone has different stories, but there's kind of this underlying collective experience and similarity that combines everyone together. And I think you've actually hit the nail on the head with the term superhero, because as a society, we're kind of, religion used to be a possibility for ourselves to project the sort of, what would you say, the philosophy of hero or philosophy of good and evil is something that's embedded deep. Yeah. I believe it's something that's embedded deep into us, and religion was a way, not limited to this, but it was a way of projecting our own need for that sort of narrative into a larger concept, and we've lost that in recent sort of generations. Hence why superhero movies have suddenly become the most popular genre of film, because we've lost that societal narrativization and we're looking for it in other contexts. So I love and that's a brilliant question. I have a little question I ask everyone, but yours as well. But that question of what's your superpower or whatever you said is really good. So I was watching, Piers Morgan did an interview with Chris Williamson, who I'm sure you know. Chris Williamson, he's great. And they said, what's more important, physical strength or mental strength? And Piers Morgan gave a very sort of Piers Morgan answer and said, oh, well, young people need to have more mental strength nowadays, da-da-da-da. And then Chris said, no, I'd say physical strength, because mental strength, he used the term mental strength is downstream from physical strength. And he said that a good workout is more beneficial to you than any form of mental, meditation or whatever. And I think I quite like that, actually. So what's your opinion on what do you think built the other? Mental strength sort of encouraged you to get strong, and you saw that was a way of becoming physically strong using mental strength, or was the physical strength came first and then you were able to build more mental strength as a result of exercising and weightlifting? It's a bit of a blur. But
I get it. Yes, Yes, I'm going to actually be quite, fairly controversial. Not really.
I like that. I love it.
I'm going to say they don't exist alone. I'm going to say that mental strength just isn't seen, so it isn't realized. And I'll put an application to that. So if I'm coaching somebody in strength, you don't suddenly, within a month, put on loads of muscle and lift 100 kilos more. It's not, you can do the 100 kilos more, but it's not the muscle that does it. It's your body's ability to be able to release power and the energy to the right place to be able to do that. So because we see physical attribute, because we see results, we see performance, we see all these things, these achievements, these feats, we can measure physical strength very, very easily. It's something we can wear, we can be proud of. We can't measure mental strength. So this is why I reckon if anyone that's listening to this, or if you look back as well, Ollie, if you ever identify someone being who you would consider quite mentally strong, resilient, people that have come through something that's been really challenging and got through to the other side, you would say, well, you would have had to, that didn't take physical strength. You can't climb yourself out of that low mood or that, depression or whenever you are. You have to, there is some mental strength. But you tell that person that they're mentally strong, most will deny it because they don't understand how they can attribute that to themselves. Does that make sense?
That's a really interesting one. Yeah, that does make sense. That's a really, really interesting way of looking at it. And you kind of opened a can of worms there, but worms that I can't really see where they've gone.
Pandora's box.
So I don't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sort of. There is what do I say to that? Even though there's definitely something pretty genius in that. Yes, physical strength is tangible, isn't it? I suppose, but whereas mental strength isn't, and there's a humbleness. Part of being mentally strong is to be humble, and therefore, if you admit saying, or if you go, "Oh yeah, I'm really mentally strong," maybe there's a video that I watched a while ago where these guys are in a gym. This guy's in a gym and he starts like pushing guys, and he finds that the bigger the guy that he pushes, the less aggressive they are after being pushed, and whereas they have less to prove, I suppose, or there's kind of this sort of acknowledgement that the more powerful you are, the more damage you can do, so therefore the more responsibility you have. With great power comes great responsibility, and that's another reason why building muscle is probably a really good way of understanding the power that you can have, and therefore because Jordan Peterson, and I think this is right. Do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yes.
So Jordan Peterson says, do you think, here's a great quote, if you think strong men are dangerous, wait till you see what weak men are capable of. And I think it's a brilliant quote. And I actually think the good boy, the nice guy, bad boy phenomenon is an extension of that quote. When women, or the reason why women are attracted to stereotypically bad boys is because they're displaying some kind of aggression, and therefore, or maybe aggression is the wrong word, they're displaying some kind of dark's also the wrong word. What's the word? Sort of unhinged in terms of apathetic behavior, and therefore they're allured to that because it's the presence that is their kind of the self-recognition is present, whereas I think they think nice guys are just hiding. So Jung would say, who's a psychologist, would say that people need to integrate their shadow, which is basically all the dark parts of ourselves. I've gone all over the place here, so apologies. But he would say people need to integrate their shadow, so they need to embody and incorporates the word, the darkest parts of them. Otherwise, they'll find one day they might end up doing something that they had no idea they were capable of doing, which is often what causes PTSD, by the way. It's not just something bad happens to someone, it's that they do something awful and they had no conception that they were ever capable of doing it. So building muscle is a great way of incorporating the shadow, showing the dark side, and therefore you can then be a good person anyway. What am I saying?
It's about understanding potential.
Yes, yeah.
And, I found that I did for a little bit. I started some martial arts, a little bit of karate, and, that's all about, it's knowing there's that dragon inside, if we're going to go to a kind of martial arts type analogy. but then knowing that you can control when it comes out, but you realize how strong it is, and then you are in control playing it in the ways you want. The problem is when we look there, when we go back to the bad guys, bad boys, again, they're wearing that as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Not sure that they're looking at all the other things. So their shadows, as you said, incorporating those shadows, their shadows will be those emotional feelings, sadness, things like that they won't then bring into that. Likewise, people that maybe are more introverted or more shy don't understand what they are capable of in the other way in terms of being physically present or being, whether it's aggression or, whatever it is. So I think if we can just learn more about ourselves, and I think hopefully if we can see a bit of a shift it's a big ask, bit of a shift in society and shining the light inwards rather than how we should be for others to fit in.
Yeah.
And go back to being individuals, that'd be quite good.
Absolutely. And you said right at the beginning, before I went on my little, whatever that was, you said something about physical strength and mental strength. Oh, you said something about how someone can lift 100 kilograms, but it's not actually the physical, it's the mental. And I believe, or something akin to that. And I believe that the guy that came up with Hulk because he saw a woman lift a car up because their child was stuck underneath it. And that was the whole idea. It was in moments of intense need, we're capable of doing things that we had no idea we're capable of doing. So
absolutely,
in a way,
physiologically, how many times did something happened and all of a sudden you've tried to run from something, but all of a sudden you've just run 2 miles, but you've never tried to run in your life. Adrenaline comes in and it takes us to our true potential, but we're not. Well, that's what the adrenaline does. So you will do things, you'll remove inhibition, you will be able to lift a car if your child was. You'll be able to do all these things because you keep no blockers there. There's no internal kind of resistance to doing that. So the application of it is there. It's not just about, like we said, building the muscle, the tissue to be able to do it. It's actually believing that we can do it.
Yeah. And just a random little memory. One of my earliest memories watching TV was there's a program called Neighbours, which is like an Australian soap. And there was a guy in a wheelchair and someone fell into a swimming pool and knocked their head and came unconscious. And this guy pushed himself into the swimming pool. And then what happened after that is he was able to, I just remember a shot of him being able to move his foot again. And I think there's some phenomenon where people that have been paralyzed, maybe it's completely inaccurate, but I did remember Googling it, where that sheer shock can trigger something. I mean, I'll have to do my check, and I'll do my check. If there's nothing in it, then I'll cut it out of the video. But I just think, I always remember thinking, wow, that's amazing. I said to Mum, what's happened there? And she said, oh, well, the shock of his whoever falling into the pool meant that he had to get in there. It's amazing what the human body's capable of doing.
Yeah. Well, we've seen, I'm sure if there's anybody that's been listening, or we've read stories of people overcoming all sorts, like, beating the odds, overcoming the odds. And sometimes there are things that happen that can't be explained by medicine. We're always learning. So, there's nothing to say that couldn't actually happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any, fascinating, yeah. So we've spoken a lot about other people's mental health. Did you get into this because you had difficulties, or did it not? Have you never had any mental health difficulties, but you just felt this strong sort of self-imploration to go there? Where did it come from?
That is a good question. So I've always, since being a teen, I've been aware of my thought processes and wondering, more of a wonderment about my own mental, learning a little bit about depression, because I was maybe when I was late high school, kind of doing my GCSE, it was around 2000, so it was around the millennium. So at that time, there wasn't really much talk on it. It wasn't huge. My dad passed in the year 2000. So my dad died when I was 4. And, you know, as it turned out and as I learned as I got old, he took his own life. And we see this, within mental health. It always left a little question for me growing up. So I suppose that as I got older and then I've always done things for others or working with people. So then when I'd see people that were struggling, kind of learn how to help them and what they needed. And I kind of build up this thing or this little bank of things to be able to help people more. And it was nice, but never around my own mental health because I kind of squashed it to the side a little bit. And then I suppose really it was, again, we come back to COVID. That was the real thing for me that made me really look at my own mental health. It was only a year ago that I had counselling, therapies, all sorts of different stuff, that I actually asked the doctor to be medicated and whether he thought that was a good option for me. And I'm a year in and was a real help. And it's not been the only thing I've not relied on. I've always tried other things as well. Because, I believe there's power in them all. And I believe that the one way to be able to really help yourself is to be inquisitive, to try and understand how you can understand yourself, how you can, be kind to yourself, really, is the root of it. It's not even about becoming stronger, it's just being understanding yourself better. And for many years, I didn't want to be depressed. I didn't want that label, and there was a resistance to ever looking into it. And now I'm realising, actually, was that because of, the nature in my dad's, or, was there something else to it? And I just had to reach past that and go, I just need support. Whatever that looks like, I need support right now. And I remember being sat there and I was talking to my mum and, I was almost in tears. I just didn't know what to do at that point. And I wasn't, never felt suicidal myself. I've never done, anything like that. I've never self-harmed. But I just felt really low. I felt like I lacked purpose. I felt like I just didn't know where I want my life to go. I didn't even know why I was here. And my mum just said, look, says if you want to get into the doctors, I'm concerned about you. I'm medicated. Some of the rest of your family are. We all say, and I reached out. And since doing that and being that, I did a TikTok. I did a story of like 30 different TikTok posts about the first 30 days on Searchling. And, as you start to have a conversation on it, I realised that the stigma had built up necessarily by society, because society didn't want mental health to be a thing. It kind of shied it away, and we have history of asylums and all this stuff, and it always has kind of a conversation about. You realise the more that you speak to people, the more that you can find a commonality in some of these struggles, and yeah, I'll openly tell anyone that I've been diagnosed with depression, anxiety. I'm looking into other mental health assessments through professional guidance, and the importance to me is being able to be kind to myself and understand that, and kind of use my voice to go, it's okay. There is always a caveat to that, and I always say it's okay as long as you're trying to help yourself. And I'd say that to anybody. I'd say that to a PT class. Understanding something difficult to deal with is okay as long as you're trying to help yourself. And I think there's another conversation there entirely, and another kind of I think if we, especially where medicine concerned, if we medicate, a lot of medication doesn't solve the root of the issue. It helps the symptoms. So if we always just help the symptoms, then we're always saying that, okay, the root cause is always going to be a thing. So surely, depending on what it is, if we know we can help the root cause, for example, let's go on to something completely different that might be relatable. We go on to using something that will stop your cravings if someone's trying to lose. Okay, let's take something psychologically. What's going to happen when you stop it? Are you going to be in any different place, or is it literally just the medication that's helped you? And I'd always say to anyone, just look at, just do a little bit of research, get to know why you do things, get to know why it feels wrong to, be kind to yourself, or just any of this, just do a bit of further reading that isn't watching the news. I don't watch the news. I don't watch TV. I watch box sets. I watch series. To try and limit the stuff that's coming in because it's all based on big agendas. And what's your agenda? What do you want to learn about yourself? What do you want to learn about the people you care about? Well, I realise again, kind of gone in the circles. It goes outwards, and there was quite a bit in there, but yeah, it's taken me a long time to be able to prioritize looking inside, looking at me rather than just going, something's not right here, so I'll put on this armor, as we've said before, use it to help.
Yeah. Heavy is the spirit that desires to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some cringy comment. There's heavy is the head that wears the crown, but that's not quite right. Those that are sort of burdened with deep thinking and a desire for purpose have any virtue that you do not utilize will ultimately become a vice, and it will become a detriment to your life. So, you've obviously found incredible solace, as have I, in pursuing something that you find meaningful and being engaged in things that fill you with purpose and enthusiasm, and that's the gift and the curse, is that, because I've had, as lots of people have, to be fair, nowadays, because meaning and purpose is quite a grey area in the sense of what does it really mean, meaning, purpose. In some ways, it's not as clear as you'd think, but finding that can be such a revelatory process. And if I'm feeling down, then doing an edit for one of the podcasts or doing some graphics, etc., is a great way. It's a regulatory way, in the same way that you have your things that regulate you, and we all have things that help us and knock us back into shape when maybe aspects of our psyche are straying wayward. That's what life's about, really, isn't it? Finding those things.
Yeah.
What's your ideal configuration of the world? And I guess what that means is how would you, if you could choose, want people to think about themselves and see themselves? That's such a vague question. Does anything come to mind when I say that sort of those nebulous question? Or if you could impart...
when you said about the configuration of the world?
Yeah.
I think when you sent that through, I saw it and I thought, ooh, I think it's a lot to
There's an awful lot.
But I think really there's an argument in my head that I love how connected the world is. I love the fact that we can do this now. We can chat.
Yeah.
It opens up so many different ways of communicating with people that we never would before. But part of me, I'm trying to find what the magic was in having separate societies.
Yeah.
And that almost idea of unknown, and having to travel to those places to learn about those places, to go and see them, so that it's almost like knowledge that, that you have to go and find, because you can be enlightened, because let's face it, we go on holiday now, unless you really try to be disconnected, you can still be on your social media and your music players on your phone, so then you're still on Facebook, and you're still talking to people that you would be at home anyway. So you have to try to get away. Whereas, when I was a kid, we would take our old Ford Escort, or remember it well, up to maybe go a couple of hours away to the seaside. We were completely away from everything. Nothing was the same. And there was a magic in that I think it's very hard to find nowadays because you have to force it.
Yeah.
So I would almost enforce some kind of disconnect.
I like that.
If I was gonna,
Okay, that's good. That's a good question. Yeah, because just thinking about it as you were saying that, the magic of going on holiday, if you go to France or wherever you go, the older you get, the less and less of the magic you feel. And now with social media, it's almost, less and less changes when you go away or when you go abroad, because such a big part of our lives is technology, and we can take that with us. So I've already said the word magic, but the magic of being in a completely different place has been slightly mitigated as a result of that. Right. What is your superpower?
what is my super? My superpower is I don't have a rehearsed answer for this because I asked other people what would theirs be, and there's only one person that's turned it round. If I was to say what it would be, what I'd like if I was to create myself as a superhero, it would be to fly. And if I could fly, now I'm scared of heights.
Brilliant.
So I'd really have to face that. But if I knew I could fly, then I'd be okay. I'd be able to face one of my biggest fears. But if I was to say, so you phrased it differently, so what is my power as I sit here, right?
Yeah.
My superpower is I don't know. That's a tough one. You've seen the side that said, help me out.
Well, this is not, it doesn't really do you justice, to be fair, but just something that's sort of come in my mind as we've been talking is, I think you're a great embodiment of what masculinity can be in its strongest and purest form, and also the ability to, what's the word? Is it rectify, or to incorporate femininity as well as kindness? I had this, as you were talking earlier, I was like, yeah, if there was an embodiment of masculinity that you could sort of show towards young men, then I would promote you. I would promote Matt Wilson as a figurehead for that, and what men should be represented in society, and what young boys should try and strive to be as much as can. Maybe not all the tattoos. Maybe I'd say tone it down on the tattoos a little bit. But no, I'm joking. But I would say that's up to choice. That's it's personal discretion, the tattoo front. But I would I'd say, but that's a bit of a crap one. Maybe it's not a crap one. But if I was going to say what's your superpower?
Well, the interesting thing is that's not crap at all, and that feels like a huge thing. Kind of as I described that live process of hearing that, taking that on, that shows where I am in the process. Because if I was to say I am the embodiment, the blend of being able to be masculine but also feminine energies, that doesn't feel right for me to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because it doesn't mean that it shouldn't not feel right. It's just because that, for me, internally right now as I sit here, feels too grand for me. You know what I mean? So it's the idea of that humbleness. So it's really hard for me to think about what my power is. Now, maybe it's being able to see the best in everyone, being able to sit back and remove judgment, being able to see both sides of the story and being open to that. Maybe that is my power, but that one that you've just said is huge. It's super powerful. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And you've also no, thank you. You've also had a life that has had immense challenges, and you've still strived to be the best you can be, and that's not what makes you a superhero. That's not your superpower, but that's what makes you a superhero. Just you can give any character superpowers, but what makes them a hero is what they do with their powers. So I would say that's what makes you the hero, is what you do with what you've got and what you bring to others, as we said right at the beginning.